Welcome to another edition of my Legendary Lick series where I examine licks that are legendary that fall into very specific categories. This time, we're looking at legendary licks that people play wrong until now. You play them almost correct. This isn't necessarily like licks that are impossible to learn, it's just the attention to detail, the tiny little nuances that make these licks sound the way that they do. I am going to examine some of my favorite guitar players. We are talking about Nuno Bettencourt, John Mayer, Mike Einziger, just to name a few. And since I'm going to be playing a lot of popular music that will most likely be copyright claimed, I want to let you know that Guitar Super System is linked right down below. I have 2 brand new curriculums coming, a Tips, Tricks, and Licks edition curriculum, as well as an acoustic curriculum, as well as a brand new messaging forum, all coming in the second week of January 2021. So if you're interested, check out the link down below. Thank you for your support. Now let's get to the first legendary lick that everybody plays wrong. I've had a lot of requests over the years to examine Nuno Bettencourt's guitar playing. He is an absolute wizard on the axe. If I had to describe his playing, it would be funk metal. So for this He-Man Woman Hater riff, we are tuned down a half step. There are a couple different things that people get wrong about this riff. Primarily the actual notes themselves. I've seen a lot of people play the flat 3 to 2, and it is this major third. Because this is an A major riff. So that's how you can identify those intervals. Also, the alternate picking part of this, it is so essential. That little pinch harmonic, it really blooms when you have that kind of momentum from the alternate picking. I find it so much easier to play this riff when you do that as opposed to using hammer-ons. As you can hear, it just doesn't have that same funk, that same pocket when you use the hammer-ons as when you use the alternate picking. The second part that people get wrong about this, there's this note happening on the second time through. That G note. The first time through, it's the D note. Second time. And then this part here is pretty simple compared to the other part. First time. Same thing repeats again. Now this time. We go down from the C to the G. Really, this is such a useful exercise in itself. Moving on to the next legendary lick that everybody plays wrong until now. Little story about this song, why I included it in this video. When I went to Berklee College of Music, I auditioned for the Tower of Power ensemble. It was sort of like an extracurricular ensemble. There was the Yellow Jackets ensemble, the Lettuce ensemble, and Tower of Power, among a couple others, and it was a real privilege and honor to be inducted into that ensemble. You had to be really good, obviously, or not everybody could play in it. But anyway, my audition song was this song, What Is Hip? And the band didn't play the song correctly. So I actually ended up sounding not that great, and I didn't get accepted into the ensemble. What happened was the band had like their own take on the song, but the thing about this music in particular is it has to be exactly like the recording. You can't take liberties with this type of sound, and these licks in particular that you're about to learn, they have to be exactly the way they were played on the recording, or else they just sound like generic blues licks. The bends have to be precise, but there can't be any vibrato on the bends. There has to be the exact amount of raking on the upstrokes, and there has to be the exact amount of pick attack on some of the articulations of the notes, or else the phrasing just doesn't feel special. So that's why I think a lot of people play this part incorrectly, is because they just kind of mail it in. Just like that Tower of Power ensemble, they don't quite pay attention to the details of the arrangement and of the licks themselves. So with these licks in particular, I'm going to highlight the important ones. Here we have the rake that I was talking about. So there's a lot of different ways to play that. Something like this. Or the correct way. Do you hear that throatiness? Right over top of that pickup. Not over this pickup. Not over this pickup, the middle pickup. This is a minor third. This is a major third. That's wrong. We just want a minor third, but a micro bend. We don't quite reach that major third. This bend. That is extremely important to keep clean, no vibrato. Again, bending this minor third. Not ever quite reaching the major third. Now, we have a very specific 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But we have a sort of noodly bend here. So you hear how it's really getting yanked. Now, playing this in a bland way would sound like this. But we want that extra character. And this one we are bending a whole step. Even though we've been bending little quarter tones before. And then we come around. We're really digging in here. Taking this slow. And that's probably the coolest part. I play it differently each time there because it kind of complements the horns. I'm really hitting a lot of downstrokes. It's like if James Hetfield played funk. We're really digging in as hard as we can to make those notes matter. Tower of Power, What Is Hip? That opening little lick is a very formative one in my blues vocabulary. And I think a lot of people maybe don't quite put the panache on it like they should. Hopefully you will now. Moving on to the next legendary lick that most people play wrong. Until now. This is a song that was probably blasted in my car 800 million times when I was in high school. Now maybe a lot of people play this properly, but I think the attitude is what people are missing with this lick in particular. And of course there's a couple little articulations that can make or break the sound of this. And just for context, I am in drop C. Here's where I think people get tripped up a little bit. We have this slide. I hear a lot of people going that kind of thing. And you know, maybe on its own you can't really hear that much of a difference, but the hammer-on versus the slide, that is a huge nuance in my ear. I'm really only playing one pick attack, as opposed to, you know, you can get that bend on accident if you do the hammer-on, versus. So this hammer-on is actually, I'm not really pulling down when I do it. And that's what I think people can mess up about this riff and almost create a blues element when this is a strictly metal riff, no blues, no bending, it is straight ahead. So we'll slow it down. We repeat that a few times, and then finally, that would be the ending. But it's really about that aggression, that attitude. Now that we've gotten heavy, we're gonna take it in a different direction with this next legendary lick that most people play incorrectly, until now. I've seen many different varieties of this pattern. I think maybe I've even learned this incorrectly at one point in my life. Stop This Train by John Mayer, and he uses this finger picking pattern all over his music. The cool thing about this song is once you have this finger picking pattern down, you can play the whole song. You just have to learn the chord shapes, and really you can use this to write your own music. It's a really awesome finger picking pattern, but it is kind of against a lot of guitar players' tendencies, which is why I think a lot of people play it incorrectly. You sort of have to unlearn your behavior a little bit in the picking hand in particular. The chords here are all in this droning D sound. We have this chord. We have this chord, and pay attention to the fingers that I'm using. I find this is the easiest way. Here's the second chord. Take that pinky, put it down 2 frets with the index, and then finally. So those are the 4 chords, and here is the pattern. Bam. So slowed down, we have the D and the B strings simultaneously, and then on this come down, we are hitting. You can use your thumb to create this kind of snare sound. I hit with my knuckles sometimes, but the point is when you do hit, you are also simultaneously flicking down with the index finger. So that is the thing you want to practice first. Just cycle that. Once you have that down, the third motion is to hit the E string on the upstroke with your index finger. So that's the motion. Again, cycle these. Once we have that down, this is a little bit, I'm gonna kind of group this all together. You'll feel it out. So it's 3 more little motions. D, G, swipe. And as you hear on the 2 and the 4 beat, that's when the hit is happening. And that is the pattern. We're basically just moving the chord shapes around with that pattern to achieve. That's it. You can also hammer on to start the phrase. He does that every now and then, John does, and really that's all there is to it. You just kind of cycle that pattern with these chords and you'll come up with the song. Moving on to another riff that maybe a lot of people play incorrectly. This is one of my all-time favorite songs by one of my all-time favorite guitar players, Megalomaniac by Incubus. It is always a treat to examine Mike Einzinger's playing. He has such intricate parts, and that's the thing about this guitar part in particular. It's not terribly difficult, but the intricacies, where he places certain rhythms and exactly how many times he hits certain notes, if you don't play it absolutely 100% correct, the song just doesn't sound right. So this is an examination of attention to detail. We also have some very tasty chord shapes, such as this one and this one, and just some tension too. Like, who plays that kind of stuff? So there's 3 different rhythmic devices. We have space, and we alternate between a 5-note pattern, which is this, and a 7-note pattern, which is this. Those 2 chord shapes will trade those rhythms off. So the first time we have, now we come back down. We have this rhythm again. 5-note, 7-note. So it starts with the 5, goes up to the 7, little filler, 5-note to the 7, but we're alternating the chord shapes. Now the second time it comes around, we have this, and then back. The 5, 7 pattern respectively. I mean, I could just play that song all day long. It is so awesome. The intricacies of Mike Einzinger's verse work in particular. There's always something going on. Highly recommend you check out Incubus if you haven't examined them before. And that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed legendary licks that most people play wrong until now. Hopefully I shed some light on some cool licks. Let me know in the comments what other licks would fall into this category, what other underrated licks out there, or maybe overrated or properly rated, that people just can't seem to get right. Let me know what you think, and until next time,